Welcome, guys. It's Scott here from Woke Societies, here to drop a bombshell today. The story I have today, I wasn't planning on doing it. I had a whole different set of articles I was going to talk about today, but my buddy Sean, who's been helping me out with articles and just helping me out in general, getting the more support for the channel, he sent me this one story here, and it branched out into an entire network of articles here, and I can't believe this isn't being covered. The name of the title in this episode, guys, is "Why is there 1 million UN soldiers in California right now?" And it's a very good question. I bet a lot of you didn't even know this was going on. I had no idea this was going on until today, and we're going to jump right into that. There's so much going on with as far as with this whole Ukraine thing, and if you guys didn't hear by today that there's rumors going around that Hillary Clinton is actually going to be rerunning for 2020. It's all right. So where do we begin, right? So I'm going to start here. This whole thing came from the Common Sense Show, and now I've currently subscribed to him on YouTube. I didn't hear about this guy until today, and he's got some amazing stuff. So we're going to jump right into this, guys, and it's going to blow your minds. So we're going to start out with the article, and then we're going to branch out with different articles from this, and we're going to tie this all together into a nice presentation. So the title of this came out 2 days ago. 1 million UN troops are in place to execute a coup against the United States. Trump is calling up the reserves. And if you guys already didn't hear about this, it was a couple days ago where the military, the Marines were putting out right on their website that the military reserves were being called up in case of a national emergency or civil distress. Very cryptic. So it could be nothing. It could be in response to something. We were waiting to wait and see, but still, we've seen Coup post about this as well, about Marines and Coast Guard being used. But let's see what this article says first, and we're going to get into all that stuff. As Steve Quayle has said, what is coming is no longer coming. It is already here. The UN troops are here in great numbers. The Cal exit traitors are in position. The democratic socialists are in headlong retreat, thus bringing out the need for UN intervention under the Kigali principles. And we're going to get into all that stuff, guys. So, the following contains direct evidence that, for all intents and purposes, the people of the United States who are loyal to the President and the Constitution are at war with the international forces from the United Nations who are illegally in our country in great numbers. On Thursday, October 2nd, 2019 at 6:15 a.m. Pacific, Robert Griswold contacted me and said that California had indeed taken away any meaningful shortwave/ham radio capabilities by order, the removal of any repeaters on high ground. This would not prevent line-of-sight transmission, but that is all. If this prohibition was in play during the last year's dramatic and deadly fires in Northern California, hundreds, if not thousands of more lives would have been lost. Radio communication saves lives, but saving lives is not the objective of the extreme left. In the following interview, Robert Griswold stated that this is the attempt by the ultra-liberals of California to take out the communications capability for purposes of self-defense for the average citizen of California. And the interview is down below. So, guys, just to backtrack a little bit, I had never heard of Cal exit before. I had to look up into all this stuff and what all this stuff meant. Because remember, I had just become awakened probably over a year ago, and I remember hearing stories about California wanting to break apart from the United States when Trump took office. I never really thought anything about it because I just thought it was politics. They didn't agree, so they wanted to do their own thing, right? Well, I looked up into more of what CalExit was, and this Newsweek article sums it up a little bit here. This says the latest. You guys got to remember too. What is this from? This is from May of 2017. The latest iteration of the so-called CalExit movement took its first formal steps Friday when organizers submitted a ballot measure that would amend the state's constitution to remove the word "inseparable" from the declaration that California is an inseparable part of the United States of America. It is the second such push since November when Donald Trump lost to Hillary Clinton by 30 points in California, the country's most populous state, but ultimately went on to win in the Electoral College, as we all know. It is the intent of the people of the state of California that California became a fully functioning sovereign and autonomous nation whether within continued association with the United States of America or as an independent country. Peacefully through the negotiation with the federal government of the United States, reads the proposal submitted by the California Freedom Coalition. The group is led by Steve Gonzalez, who says he decided to pursue the movement following Trump's victory, but Gonzalez, who serves as Secretary Treasurer and President of the coalition, describes himself as a recovering Democrat, insists that the measure is about far more than just the current individual in the Oval Office, and it surely is, as we're about to see. The latest polling on support for Californian independence conducted at the end of March showed just 32% in favor, but Sherry Beppich Jeff, a political analyst and professor at the University of Southern California, said there is little question that the movement is understandably attempting to capitalize on the widespread disapproval of Trump and policies that have been viewed as targeting Californians. So right now, guys, there is a split as far as people that want to have California split off the United States, and then you have what's called the New California movement, in which is composed of Democrats and Republicans that are tired of the socialist agendas in California in general. So this is what they're talking about. These Cal exit traitors are in position. It says the Democratic Socialists are in a headlong retreat, thus bringing out the need for UN intervention. So these Cal exit traitors feel that they're desperate. They need to get control of the state, and they want nothing to do with any kind of Trump supporters whatsoever. In this little part here, they're going into how shortwave ham radio capabilities are being removed completely. No radio responses there. Completely shut off. Now, why would they do that? Easily to cut off communications for just regular civilians as well, and anybody that wants to have any kind of communication via radio out in California. Cutting this down. Crazy, right? And now, the other thing I wanted to get into right here, where do we go? Let's get, this next part here. The Dave Hodges / Paul Preston interview. In a subsequent discussion with Paul Preston in the late evening of 10/2/2019, the president of the New California movement was informed by myself of the ban on repeaters for California-based ham radios. Our subsequent search produced a legal document which described how the ban on repeaters happened. This was not the action of the California legislature. This was the action of one bureaucrat acted out in typical communist fashion. Paul and myself subsequently decided to do an interview on that topic. Very quickly, the topic shifted back to what had previously been revealed. Paul and I discussed the international forces, criminal cartel leadership, and California Democrats that are behind Calexit. And as I revealed in part 1 of the series, Paul Preston in detail exposed the players and their agenda consisting of overthrowing the United States government. As we discussed in the interview, we exposed the fact that the ham radio repeater ban was an attempt to destroy the citizens who support New California and their ability to coordinate a defense against the aggression of the Calexit communists. This action by California government destroys the command and control of the citizens of California and makes them getting conquered more likely. This is exactly the same conclusion reached by Robert Griswold in our interview earlier that same day. Both Paul Preston and Robert Griswold both indicated that California will likely be the epicenter for Civil War II. Little did any of the three of us realize that our projections were to come into full view by the end of the day with the Steve Quayle revelations. Here's the interview, and it's a 50-minute interview, which I'll also link in the description. But guys, the most important part of this whole entire episode today is what Steve Quayle's deep cover source gave him about what is actually going on in California, and this is going to be the meat and the potatoes of the episode today. I have been unable to contact Steve Quayle to discuss the revelations that he sent to me by email. I would copy and paste, but I fear exposing a source because of the possibility of backtracing the communications. Subsequently, I am going to summarize the major findings, and here we go, guys. This is a force of 750,000 to 1.2 million UN soldiers with equipment on American soil. Most of the UN troops were originally spotted in geographic areas associated with Trump political support. The anticipation was that something is going to happen to the president that will put angry citizens on the street, and the UN troops will be there waiting for them. Editor's note, please note that this is the unfolding of the dreaded Kigali principles I have been warning American citizens about for over 3 years, and we're going to get into what those are. Obama signed these documents in December of 2016, just prior to leaving office. It grants the UN the authority to enter the United States to restore order in their image. In other words, this is a coup and a potential civil war at the same time. So before I go any further, guys, we're going to dive deep into what all these things are. What are the Kigali principles? The Kigali principles are, here's the list of them here. I have them right here, and it's essentially a piece of legislation that allows the UN to go in to any country that's in this agreement and to pretty much enact martial law and have UN forces take over to protect civilians from things such as hate speech and a bunch of other things. And unfortunately, right at the end of Obama's 2016 presidential run, he and John Kerry got us into this Kigali Principle membership, and here we are right here, United States, right there. So the question I asked in the beginning, why are they're saying 750,000 to 1.2 million UN soldiers in California. Well, why are they there? Well, let's take a look. Let's look at deeper into what these principles are that supposedly allow the UN peacekeepers to come into our country. Communities expect UN peacekeepers to protect them. Currently, 97% of uniformed personnel in UN peacekeeping operations serve under mandates to protect civilians. The Kigali Principles on the Protection of Civilians are a non-binding set of pledges to implement certain best practices in peacekeeping. They were issued at the conclusion of the high-level international conference on the protection of civilians held in Rwanda on May 28th and 29th, 2015. Since then, the Kigali Principles have been referred to and discussed in several meetings, including the Leaders' Summit on Peacekeeping, which was convened by President Obama and other world leaders during the 70th United Nations General Assembly. As signatories of the Kigali Principles, Rwanda, Uruguay, the Netherlands, and the United States, in collaboration with the United States Institute of Peace, are organizing an event on the Kigali Principles as best practice guidelines for the effective implementation of the POC mandates in UN peacekeeping operations. This event aimed to familiarize the Washington, D.C. community with the Kigali Principles and highlight how they may be used to improve the implementation of protection of civilians mandates in UN peacekeeping operations. Continue the conversation on Twitter. So, guys, this is the whole setup. So, the deep state's plan of Trump winning the election was not in their plan. You guys have to remember, Obama was the setup person for the ultimate downfall of our democracy when Hillary was supposed to win. Everyone, the deep state, had no idea that Trump was going to win and didn't think he stood a chance. And what's important about all this is the executive order that Obama had signed into that is pretty much Nazi-like in a way. And I'm going to show you that as well, how it's all connected. But let's continue with this article here. Steve's source stated that many of those troops are now settled into known FEMA camps. In the next part of the series, we'll discuss what we can expect in detail from FEMA camps under UN rule. If one would like to get out in front of this material, go to the search engine of the Common Sense Show and put FM 39.4, and you will quickly see that these camps will be manned by foreign U.S. troops. Stephen Qualls' revelations are more detailed, but the above captures the main idea of the severity of the threat. Offhandedly, there is substance for the apparent paranoia of Dave Hodges, Paul Martin, Paul Preston, and Steve Quayle. President Trump is mobilizing the reserves, and this information is official and very public, which it was, and it came out just a couple days ago. This is very recent, guys. By the way, do you remember the last year when the Cook County Commissioners attempted to bring the UN to police the streets of Chicago and were rebuffed by the Trump administration? Do you recall when AOC recently called for the UN to police the border? I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea. This is a well-orchestrated plot that is now surfacing because Hillary Clinton or any other Democratic communist can win the presidency. Now, what no one is talking about with these Kigali Principles is, let's just say, now the source in that article said he's a truck driver that saw UN forces of that magnitude already in California. That's what that source is saying. And do you think it's a coincidence that Trump would call for the reserves in the military, especially the Marines, just a couple days ago? Worst case scenario, something does break out and the troops are needed to protect civilians from a UN takeover. That's what this is all about. Because what this is here, this is from a forum I found. This was from May 2018, so this is way before just these recent events. But they're very, very relevant today. So this, guys, is what would happen if a UN takeover, say that were to happen in California. What's going to happen after they enact martial law? Their own version of martial law. Well, let's take a look. I ran across the 17 principles of UN martial law as per the Kigali principles online, and let it read to me further revelations that are not at all in our best interest. The United States is announcing its support for a set of principles that give a green light for UN peacekeeping troops and police to use force to protect civilians in armed conflicts. And it's up to them, the UN, to decide what's an armed conflict and enemy, not us. U.S. Ambassador Samantha Power told the high-level UN meeting Wednesday, focusing on the responsibility to protect civilians, that the United States was proud and humbled to join 28 other countries that had pledged to abide by the 18 pledges. UN peacekeepers from these 29 countries are now required to act in cases where civilians are in danger. The Kigali principles are designed to make sure that civilians are not abandoned by the international community again, she said, recalling how UN peacekeepers left Rwanda before the 1994 genocide and Srebrenica before the 1995 massacre. The United States has announced support for, again, the principles. So, from principles to action. So what would actually happen if the United Nations were to come in here and enact their own martial law? So the Committee on the Eliminations of Racial Discrimination has demanded that our highest level politicians and government officials of the United States to condemn racist hate speech and crimes in Charlottesville. And of course, that's the one they reference. Of course, we have George Soros, whose groups of Black Lives Matter and Antifa have been agitating racial disharmony since Trump took office. They stand poised to unleash an absolute havoc on American streets. The resulting chaos will provide the excuse for the UN to go public and attempt to take over of the United States. As previously covered multiple times on the Common Sense Show, that Calexit planned violence has the same potential. And it should be noted that Calexit plans to exit the U.S. and become Protectorate of the United Nations. This event would drive a stake through the heart of America, as California accounts for 60% of American agriculture and about 25% of all retail. So guys, you can see why this is so serious. If an actual UN takeover of California were to happen, it would cripple a lot of our resources. So what would the UN coup look like? What would this look like, guys? When the UN shows up, do you think they're going to be handing out donuts and cookies? The Kigali principles and past UN actions speak clearly to what is coming. Because the UN would be going public in the midst of an artificially created crisis, you can very well count on the following 17 principles. Now please pay attention, as this is stating. 1. Mass roundup of political dissidents. So most likely people who support Trump. Mass roundups. These will most likely be declared as terrorists and enemies of the state and will be linked to the precipitating false flag event. This will be the unfolding of red and blue list as spoken by the Steve Qual for the last couple of decades. The NDAA will provide the pseudo-legal authority to snatch key Americans out of their homes and off the street. So guys, just the first one off the top, they can declare you an enemy, and at the same time, if they see you in your home or the street, they can snatch you up and you'll never be seen again. That's just one. Dusk to dawn curfews, which are designed to keep the people from congregating and planning in concert to overthrow the omnipresent tyranny. Rationing and essential resources are specified in Executive Order 13603, and we're going to get into that too. Control over all food and water, the seizing of personal assets, the prohibition of weapons of any kind, including guns, knives, chemicals, which can be turned to explosives. It'll become a capital crime to possess a weapon of any type. So if you possess a firearm, it's punishable by death. The confiscation of property, homes, they can take away your home. Arrest without due process. Massive papers, please, checkpoints with intrusive searches. And let's just go down here a little bit. Control of the media, which there already is. Executions without due process. Total suspension of the Constitution, as this is essentially complete in light of actions such as EO 13603 and the NDAA. I did not even mention the multiple of sexual assault allegations made against UN troops and other venues. And I understand that some think that the discussion of FEMA camps is conspiracy theory nonsense, yet the facts speak louder than the echo chambers of Snopes and CNN do inside of other people's brains. Paul Preston called me in 2 nights ago and discussed the massive weapons bust from what the media is calling the Mexican Mafia. There is no such thing as the Mexican Mafia. There are combination forces in this country consisting of UN/Mexican drug cartels and ISIS in the Muslim Brotherhood and Governor Jerry Brown's Calixte regime. These seized weapons demonstrate how far Brown is willing to go. Preston has declared on my radio show that these embedded sources who have been at meetings run by former and disgraced attorney General Eric Holder have pledged violence against white California citizens in order to force the UN to intervene under the Kigali principles so that they don't exist. Wow, so there's a lot to get in there, guys. So we're talking about this is what you'd be looking at if the UN were to come in, say there is some kind of threat in the state and that they are requesting UN services, and this is what they'll be allowed to do in one state, and all it needs to do is start in one state. Now again, the timing of when Trump is calling on as the reserves, the Marines, and it's not just the Marines, it's a whole bunch, it's the whole military. It's a mass military operation where they're calling in the reserves just in case something is to pop off. Is this the reason why? I'm not sure. This was from 2018, but again, I'm showing you guys this article. This is from October 5th, just 2 days ago. Now, we all know Trump's response to the threat. Civil war seems inevitable to this point. What I would like to know is how these UN troops got into the United States. I suspect it is, as I reported during the last Central American invasion, is that the UN was entering the U.S. along with immigrants. I also reported that the UN asserted their authority over the border and facilitated over the objections of the Border Patrol the entry of gangs of MS-13 assassins into the heartlands of America. And more to that point, Trump is mobilizing the reserves in response to the UN threat. All the naysayers are now about to choke on their collective gum. Here's the public proclamation which brings in the reserve in the country. We are at war, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the excerpt from a Marine Corps document that calls up the reserves to deployment. And again, and this guy is of the high opinion that there is more indication that a coup is being initiated against President Trump. Keep your powder dry, America. We're living in historical times. Stay tuned for more updates. So, guys, Is this an overreaction? Do we really think there's going to be a civil war in California? I am not sure. But what I am sure about is that the UN being called in to take authority over our borders has happened before. But the good news is we have also pushed back on it. Now, the first immigration from Central America, not this current one, but the first one, was stopped. But at that time, Homeland Security was so pissed off that the UN was controlling the borders and literally allowing all these immigrants through, and a huge mass amount of MS-13 gang members, allowing them to come into our country. And we know what Q has talked about as far as MS-13 gangs. And Trump as well has specifically called out MS-13. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. But the crazy thing here is, when you search UN takeover of borders, what do you see, guys? You see Ilhan Omar and the squad AOC, a massive amount of articles talking about how they're calling for the UN, United Nations, to take over America's borders. I wonder why that would be. This is scary stuff, guys. And you can see here, globalism. Omar demands UN take control of U.S. borders. The UN nations is trying to grab control of worldwide migration, and they want to be in control of it. So we're going to have a foreign entity control who is allowed and not allowed into our country. Scary stuff. Absolutely scary stuff. Right, and this is all happening. This is all happening right now. So supposedly, this report, this man that saw these trucks, is enough of a force of 750,000 to 1.2 million UN soldiers. Absolutely crazy. I just want to check my notes here real quick just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And guys, yes, this other story here, which I don't want to forget. So, to give you guys a little history, this last article here was talking about, right here, Executive Order 13603. This was an Obama executive order. Now, why is this so important? Obama made this executive order. So what exactly is it? So guys, let's just think if Hillary had won the election. This is what she would have given the power to do. Article 1, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution states, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. The key phrase here is herein granted. Those powers granted to Congress by the states and the people are delineated in Article 1 and primarily in Section 8 of the same. Nowhere does the Constitution say that federal agencies can allocate all food, energy, water, food, and all labor. However, this is precisely what Executive Order 13603 calls for. This EO would be concerning enough. However, this EU turns every American into a slave through the stroke of Obama's pen. According to EO, the president or the head of any federal agency that he shall designate can conscript persons of outstanding experience and ability without compensation, in both peacetime and times of national emergency. I can hear Obama supporters now as they will write to me and say, Obama would never do that. You were drinking from the Kool-Aid. Well, here it is. You can read it for yourself. And here it is, guys. The head of each agency otherwise delegated functions under this order is delegated the authority of the president under Section 710B and C to employ persons of outstanding experience and ability without compensation and to employ experts, consultants, or organizations. The authority delegated by this section may not be redelegated. This means, guys, that Obama and his fellow communists can seize any resource, property, or person at any time for any reason, including being able to force that person to perform assigned labor without being paid. There's only one word for forced, uncompensated employment. That would be slavery. Congratulations, Obama. You have effectively repealed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Section 601 of the Act specifies in part how far the government can go in terms of making you into their slave. So, guys, what other comparisons can we draw to this executive order that the UN would actually employ the same exact practices? I don't know. What happened in Germany during World War II, during the Holocaust? People were gassed. They obviously all died. But not only that, they were put into labor shops where they would slowly take down their calorie count over time and just kill them to get the most out of them for no cost to them at all. This is essentially what we're looking at here in this executive order. And if Hillary Clinton had won, she would have had the power to establish things such as this. Can you imagine, guys? This is why it was so important that Trump won the election. So important. And now, the deep state is getting desperate. All the Ukraine stories are blowing up in the Dems' faces, the media's faces. They are in complete panic mode. So, of course, what do you think the obvious last resort is? It's a full-out war. To take Trump down, to take over the country, to completely just destroy our constitutional rights and slowly take over this country. In turn, is something that we can never get back again. So, and how do I know this was? How do I know this, Scott? Right? How does Scott know this is not going? This has happened before. Well, let's take a look. Boykin asked the United Nations for help fighting Chicago violence. This was in 2017. Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin headed to the United Nations in New York Thursday to ask for help fighting against violence in Chicago. I'm hoping to appeal the UN to actually come to Chicago and meet with victims of violence and maybe even possibly help out in terms of peacekeeping efforts. Boykin boarded a plane to New York City for a meeting with an Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations. It's a meeting that's been planned for more than a month and stems from disconcerting violence numbers seen this year in Chicago. Violence which has left particularly hard in many African American communities. We've had over 600 people killed by gun violence already this year alone. This is a huge number in my community of Austin. We've had about 450 people shot and 80 people killed this year alone. 18, so we have to do more to protect these communities. But the mayor's office, and Trump also urgently argued against this, the mayor's office says the call for the UN peacekeepers is a political stunt. The state superintendent said it's a nice idea, but it's not the answer to Chicago's violence. I appreciate the commissioner's energy and his anxiousness to help reduce the gun violence in Chicago. I really do commend that, but at the end of the day, the UN has no jurisdiction here. They really have no jurisdiction in this country. That's what they say, but thanks to Obama and these principles, the UN has an open door to walk in if a certain entity asks them for help to come into the country to get rid of what they deem a threat. So guys, would it surprise you if an event was set up, a massive event, like this one here? 75 people died during that weekend. So it was an urgent call to ask the UN to come into the country, a foreign entity, and to come into Chicago and take out the corrupt, the shootings, the guns, all that, right? That would be a small scale. But what we're seeing right now in California, if it's true that 1.2 million soldiers are out there, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And guys, is it a surprise to you that right now we're getting reports that like this, DOJ ID report on FISA abuse to be released in 2 weeks? Not only that, we're seeing Hillary Clinton's going to announce a campaign for 2020. And right here it says, if so, I think we can easily see it so she can try to escape behind the political targeting curtain once the Clinton Foundation investigation results start becoming public. And we know all those reports are going to start becoming public very soon. You're starting to see the deep state really panic here, guys, and it's all out there. And maybe on a lesser concern for them, this is Ron, the guy that's setting up HN again. After a few weeks of building new groundwork to better protect user privacy and security, we're now in the final stretches before getting things back online. Beta testing of infrastructure in progress, verifying and confirming that all systems are functioning as expected. So guys, we can expect Q to be back any day now. Any day. Just like all those reports that we've been waiting for months. It is what it is. When they drop, and the timing of it will be precisely the right time. You guys, all this stuff's happening. All of it. All of it's happening right now. And the timing of all this is no coincidence, I believe. So this story should be huge, guys. It's not being talked about enough. Get into this stuff yourself, guys, and really dig deep. This was not something I was planning on going into today, but it triggered my interest. I got into it, and it's scary, but also I believe Trump is in control. The Patriots are in control, just like Q says. I'm fine. I'm not worried. Reading a lot of this, it was a little scary, to be honest. If all these troops are in California to be true. And again, I showed you guys the principles, the Kigali principles, how they are important, and how that was set up for a UN takeover could happen in our country and just completely cause mass chaos and havoc. So with that, guys, that's going to be today's episode. Please drop in your comments your thoughts on this. Share it, because I have a feeling I'm already shadow banned as it is. You guys have to share this yourself. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And just give me a like, guys. It takes 1 second. You go right here in my channel. It's right here. We're at 467 and want to hit 500 by the end of this month. This is going to be in a very important time, guys. 2020 elections coming. Please get the information out. Share this with all your friends and family to get the word out. And I'm going to be doing a lot more stories like this, guys. So please, 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 thank you for all the support you have been giving me. And guys, get the word out there. This is not being reported on enough. So until then, I'll be out here lurking on social media, the internet, all that good stuff, getting more content for you guys. And until then, stay woke.